Hello everyone, Galacron here. We have gotten to Ares and Athena. So again, Ares, the god of war, but more over the bloodlust side of it, more over the physical battle side of it, violence, bloodthirsty. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, which includes, military strategy side of war. So both are god of war, or gods of war. So they're just kind of a slight delineation of the two. So Ares, bloodlust side, Athena, military strategy, strategic. So there would be the difference. There would be the slight delineation. It is important to remember that for ancient Greeks, Ares was not the only god of war, right? With the help of the epithet Arios, any god could adopt a wartime character, show prowess on the battlefield, or use their abilities to inspire a certain characteristic in war, such as Zeus's inspiration of Agamemnon in the second invasion of Troy. King Agamemnon was on the Greeks' side. However, just as the realm of love could be divided into love in the bedchamber and marital love, the realms of Aphrodite and Hera, respectively. So too could the realm of war be divided into bravery and bloodlust, and cunning and stratagem. War was a contested arena for Ares and Athena. This goes back a very long time. And the myths illustrate the difference beautifully. Of course, the story of Typhon provides a good idea of Athena's role in war. The giants were the offspring of Gaia, Mother Earth. And although they were bellicose, hubristic, and destructive, this couldn't lessen a mother's love. So after the gods defeated and wiped the giants out, Gaia was irate and sought revenge by giving birth to a beast all the more terrible than her lost sons and daughters. Now again, the timeline of this might kind of be off, because Typhon had to have time to mate with Echidna, and both were children of Tartarus and Gaia. Typhon, Echidna. Because again, Typhon is considered the father of all monsters because of his mass, height, 3,000 feet tall, wingspan cross country, and devastating attacks. So anyways. So, birth to beast, giving birth to a beast all the more terrible than her lost sons, the giants, and daughters, again the giants. Earth, still more enraged, Gaia, had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon in Cilicia. I think that's the town. A hybrid between man and beast. In size and strength, he surpassed all of the offspring of Earth. Well, again, the dude's like, 2,500 feet tall? I mean, he's like a mountain. That's how big he is. The wings even bigger. As far as the thighs, he was of human shape and of such prodigious bulk that he out-topped all the mountains. It kind of sounds like, to be honest, he was taller than 2,000 feet. He might have been 3,000 or 4,000 feet. I'm not 100% on that. And his head often brushed the stars. Again, how tall? Okay. His head often brushed the stars. One tends to wonder. One of his hands reached out to the west and the other to the east. I think that was his wings, but this says his hands. And from them projected 100 dragons' heads. From the thighs downward he had huge coils of vipers, which, when drawn out, reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt, hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes. I know he breathed volcanic fire. Such and so great was Typhon, when hurling kindled rocks, maybe even mountains, from what I've studied and looked at, mountains, he made for the very heaven with hissings and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. Volcanic fire. But when the gods saw him rushing at heaven, which would be Mount Olympus, the gods made for Egypt in flight, transforming into animals. Here it says, in being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. So, one version is because Typhon came through the water, the sea, that Poseidon fought him first, and Poseidon was dispatched quickly by Typhon. Then, as he got to land, Athena and Ares came out to fight him, and once again, quickly Typhon dispatched Ares and Athena, and Zeus gave the word to the remaining gods, everyone out, like, you're gone. The only one who's going to be Hercules as well. The only one that's going to be able to face this pure being of chaos is me, Zeus. Just Zeus. So the remainder gods, all of them, were ordered to get out because they weren't going to be able to do anything against Typhon. Like, look what he just did to Poseidon, Ares, and Athena. So Zeus is like, all you guys, all of you, out. So they transformed into animals and headed for Egypt. Even Hercules. Me, personally, I would have, if I were Zeus, I would keep Hercules around. Hercules is physically stronger than Zeus, but it might be the fact that physical strength would not be enough to defeat Typhon. I don't know, but this might be the case. That Zeus might have known that the only way that he could defeat Typhon was with his thunderbolts, which, remember, amplify his electricity and lightning from just weather lightning. Don't get me wrong, it's powerful, but the thunderbolts he charges, and it's even more powerful when he charges it and throws it. And also the adamantine sickle. So again, Hercules did leave with the rest of the gods. This is the only reasoning that I can come up with, that Zeus knew beforehand. No one's going to have any luck. Even Hercules just pounding and punching on Typhon, it wouldn't have worked. It just wouldn't. But anyways, the gods adopted following forms on their arrival in Egypt. Zeus became a ram, Hera a white cow, Hermes an ibis, Artemis a cat, and Ares took his form as the boar, and the gods cowered in Egypt as Typhon raged against Mount Olympus. All the gods, that is, except Athena. Athena never took a foot off the sacred mountain. She stood her ground in the face of the monster and called out to her cowardly kin, admonishing them for fleeing the field of battle. Zeus, ashamed of himself, heeded his daughter's calls, took his human form, and launched a barrage of lightning bolts, thunderbolts, that filled the rest of the gods' hearts with courage. and they all rejoined the fray. Now, again, there's a couple of versions, how this tale was told. My understanding is no, the gods did not follow. The gods were gone. Zeus attacked. Athena distinguished herself further from the rest of the gods when she helped Hercules to capture the city of Pylos. So they're already moving on from Typhon. So this is a different version. It might be a Roman version, because it was Zeus. Well, we can get to that later, but it was Zeus that battled Typhon and beat him with the help of the Fates. It wasn't all the gods ganging up on Typhon and they beat him. That's not how it happened. Anyways, so Hercules to capture the city of Pylos. After he had served twice as a slave, that's Hercules, completed 12 impossible labors, sacked the great city of Troy. That was the first invasion of Troy. Heracles. And returned from the voyage on the Argo. Now again, Jason and the Argonauts, Hercules left early and said, Jason, you're the leader of the voyage. Because his friend got hypnotized by a nymph on an island, so Herc left to chase after him. Argo left. The ship left. Hercules sought revenge for the wrongs done to him when he was a slave. The city of Pylos had come to the aid of the city of Elis when Hercules attacked, and to Hercules, this seemed enough of a reason to attack Pylos next. In the battle, Athena stood by Hercules' side against Hera, Poseidon, Hades, and Ares. Well, here's the thing. Athena had a knack for helping her half-brothers. Heracles was one, and half-brother, and Athena helped him often. And Athena even helped Perseus beforehand in certain ways. So Athena was cool in that way, in that context. So, in the battle, Athena stood by Hercules' side against Hera. Blah, blah. Hercules forced back Poseidon with blows from his club, while Athena was embroiled in a duel with Ares. The two battled fiercely until Hercules returned and tipped the balance of the fight in favor of Athena, and they sent Ares fleeing from the battlefield injured. I wonder what happened with Hercules versus Poseidon. In the Second Greek War against Troy, this is the Iliad. The second invasion of Troy is the Iliad. Athena and Ares clashed again and again. Again, this god of war rivalry. Homer described in the Iliad, Athena and Ares clashed again and again. After the involvement of the gods became too hostile, Zeus forbade them from taking any more part in the war and traveled to Troy himself to keep an eye on proceedings. The gods sat obediently watching the skirmishes from their home on Mount Olympus, until Ares heard of the death of one of his sons in battle. He raged, and his roar from Mount Olympus shook the souls of mortals and immortals alike. Now, like I've said before, Ares can do this. He can scream, and it's like a sonic scream. So this is true. So, paying no heed to the order their king had given... Paying no heed to the order that their king had given, Ares took up his arms and called Fear and Terror, his children, to yoke his horses to the mighty chariot. Then would yet greater and more grievous wrath and anger have been stirred between Zeus and the immortals. Had not Athena, seized with fear for all the gods, sped forth through the doorway, and left the throne whereon she sat, and taken the helm from the head of Ares, and the shield from his shoulders, and she took from his strong hand the spear of bronze, and set it down, and with words rebuked furious Ares. Thou madman, distraught of wit, thou art beside thyself. Verily, it is for naught that thou hast ears for hearing, and thine understanding and sense of right are gone from thee. Wouldst thou thyself fulfill the measure of manifold woes, and so return to Olympus despite thy grief, perforce, and for all the rest sow the seeds of grievous woe? For Zeus will forthwith leave the Trojans high of heart and the Achaeans, and will hie him to Olympus to set us all in tumult, and will lay hands upon each in turn, the guilty alike, and him in whom is no guilt. Wherever now I bid thee, put away thy wrath for thine own son, for ere now many a one more excellent than he, in might and strength of hand hath been slain, or will yet be slain, and a hard thing it is to preserve the lineage and offspring of men, spake she, and made furious Ares to sit down upon his throne. That was a mouthful, but that's what Athena told Ares. These myths accentuate certain facets of Athena's personality in comparison with that of Ares. Firstly, Athena represents the stalwart presence of mind in the face of battle. There is, after all, a good reason Phobos and Deimos yoked Ares' horses. Remember, those are his two kids. Ares' arrival on the battlefield was often realized in the arrival of fear and terror felt among the ranks. A soldier who was out of his mind in fear was said to have been possessed by Ares because he had forgotten all of the training he had gone through as a youth. During that training, a great emphasis was placed upon being able to withstand both panic and fear. Presence of mind was considered the most important quality in a soldier because it is when that presence is lost and when the logical mind begins to show the cracks of irrationality and fear that cowardice takes over all other decision-making capabilities. Well, I suppose there's some truth in that. So, Ares rewarded bravery over all else, but he was also believed to be the cause of fear, terror, and excessive rage. Rage part, that makes sense. This rage is distinct from bravery. If bravery is the presence of mind in the face of mortal danger, then rage is a kind of counterpoint, since it is the absence of mind in any situation. This is what Ares inspired among the rank and file of war, especially the Spartans, and to the ancient Greeks. It was just as counterproductive and even dangerous as fear and panic. The furor that Ares inspired darkened men's brows and blurred their vision so much so that it erased the boundaries between the two sides and even between mortals and immortals. It broke the sacrosanct barrier that usually prevents men from attacking the gods. Terror is shameful, but fury is hubristic. When Ares ignored the orders of Zeus and wanted to rejoin the melee, despite the fact that it might have incurred the wrath of Zeus against all the gods, it was Athena who disarmed him and spoke reason to his ardent ire. Athena was capable of inspiring soldiers with fury too, of course, such as in the case of Diomedes. Inspired in this way, the Greeks couldn't tell whether Diomedes was fighting with them or against them, and any soldier foolish enough to come within the length of his sword was likely not to live much longer no matter where he was from. The difference between Athena and Ares in this respect was that Athena was capable of extinguishing the flame she ignited, as she did to Diomedes. Be of good courage now, Diomedes, to fight against the Trojans. For in thy breast have I put the might of thy father, the dauntless might, such as the horseman Tydeus, wielder of the shield, was wont to have. And the mist, moreover, have I taken from thine eyes, that afore was upon them, to the end that thou mayest well discern both God and man. Wherefore now, if any god come hither to make trial of thee, do not thou in any wise fight face to face with any other immortal gods, save only if Aphrodite, daughter of Zeus, well, she wasn't the daughter of Zeus, shall enter the battle, her do thou smite with thrust of the sharp bronze. Yeah, I don't know where... Again, this is must be the Roman version. Aphrodite was way older than Zeus. She is not the daughter of Zeus. It might be Roman. And this is exactly what Diomedes did. Athena's inspiration of hubris, then, is calculated. She wanted Diomedes to be hubristic towards Aphrodite. This may have been wrong in the grand scheme of the divinely ordered cosmos, but the circumstances of the war divided the gods and frayed the fabric of established morality. Gods were not supposed to choose sides and fight each other, but when that happened, Athena was prepared to use her guile and cunning to tip the balance of war in her favor. This was not the clear martial morality exposited by the troubadours. This was Athena's skill in artifice and subterfuge being employed to ensure the right cause emerged victorious. Panic and frenzy were considered the behavior of barbarians, not Greeks. The ancient Greeks believed that any non-Greek barbarian was not lacking in courage, but was simply plagued by a propensity for savagery. As Herodotus pointed out, the barbarians were by no means inferior in valor or strength, but lacked instruction and tactical skill. They were uncivilized people taking part in an act that, even with its timing, organization, and rituals, was still ultimately savage. But the Greeks tried to civilize anyway. This civilizing act is pivotal to Athena's character, and it represents the most clear-cut distinction between Ares and Athena as deities of war. Athena was the goddess of war, wisdom, women at the loom, carpenters, charioteering, horse taming, and shipbuilding, amongst other things. Walter Burkert stated that the part of her that united all of those divergent spheres of competence is not an elemental force, but the force of civilization. He continued, "It is not the wild olive of Olympia, but the cultivated tree which is the fit of Athena. Poseidon violently sires the horse. Athena bridles it and builds the chariot. Poseidon excites the waves. Athena builds the ship. Hermes may multiply the flocks. Athena teaches the use of wool. Even in war, Athena is no exponent of daring do. This is captured in the figure of Ares, but cultivates the war dance, tactics, and discipline. When Odysseus, he has his own book, crafter and self-controlled as he is, persuades the Achaeans to join battle in spite of the war weariness, then this is the work of Athena." Athena then was a civilizing ideal, whereas Ares was an elemental force. From the myths involving Ares and Athena locking horns, it is obvious whose merits the ancient Greeks favored more. After all, And again, in Rome, in the Roman Empire, the Romans favored Ares more. But this is the Greeks we're talking about. Whether it was on Mount Olympus in Pylos or against the ferocious Cycnus, Athena was never bested by mighty Ares. Finally, when Zeus relents and once again allows the gods to take part in the war at Troy, the first to engage in rash vengeance is Ares, falling upon Athena with fiery insults. Wherefore now again, thou dogfly, art thou making gods to clash with gods in strife, in the fierceness of thy daring, as thy proud spirits sets thee on? Rememberest thou not what time thou movedst Diomedes, Tydeus' son, to wound me, and thyself in thy sight of all didst grasp the spear and let drive straight at me, and didst rend my fair flesh? Therefore shalt thou now, methinks, pay the full price of all that thou hast wrought. At this he aimed his spear at Athena's breast, but he was knocked back when the blade hit the unyielding aegis she wore as her breastplate. Now again, instead of a shield, it was a breastplate. I have a theory that it could transform, despite the fact that nothing could break it, so there must have been some powerful magic or powers put into it when Hephaestus made that thing. Athena took a step back and found a boulder at her side, which she lifted with ease and brought crashing down on stunned Ares' neck. Laughing, she admonished the god for his hubris. Fool, not even yet hast thou learned how much mightier than thou I avow me to be, that thou matchest thy strength with mine. On this wise shalt thou satisfy to the full the avengers invoked of thy mother, who in her wrath deviseth evil against thee, for that thou hast deserted the Achaeans and bearest aid to the overweening Trojans, as Walter Burkert so succinctly put it. Ares embodies everything that is hateful in war, the splendor of victory. Nike, goddess of victory, is reserved for Athena. Now we get to Ares and Aphrodite. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and sex and desire. Ares, god of war, the bloodlust side. Ares' humiliation was not limited to being bound or beaten. However, as Odysseus heard while receiving the hospitality of the Phaeacians, the minstrel struck the chords in prelude to his sweet lay and sang of the love of Ares and Aphrodite of the fair crown. How first they lay together in the house of Hephaestus secretly, and Ares gave her many gifts, and shamed the bed of the god Hephaestus, god of the forge and god of fire. Ares and Aphrodite had taken every opportunity while Hephaestus was away from home to enjoy Aphrodite's marital bed. Ares told the youth Electryon to guard the chamber door and watch for the ascension of the sun. Helios, who saw all that his light touched, and was apt to inform Hephaestus of their antics. After that, he joined Aphrodite in bed. The two immortals made love throughout the night and well into the morning, undisturbed by warnings from the youth outside, who had fallen asleep before Helios ascended. When the light hit their room, Helios sped to the smith god to tell him what he had seen. And when Hephaestus heard the grievous tale, he went his way to his smithy, pondering evil in the deep of his heart, and set on the anvil block the great anvil and forged bonds which might not be broken or loosed, that the lovers might bide fast where they were. But when he had fashioned the snare in his wrath against Ares, he went to his chamber where lay his bed, And everywhere round about the bedposts he spread the bonds, and many too were hung from above, from the roof beams, fine as spiders' webs, so that no one even of the blessed gods could see them, so exceeding craftily were they fashioned. Later that night, after the trap was set, Hephaestus retired to the island of Lemnos, where he had a richly built palace. Watching the movements of the cuckolded god, Ares took advantage of Hephaestus's absence and met Aphrodite at the house she shared with her husband. He brought her gifts and